Hey everyone, good morning. Once we get everyone in, we'll kind of start here. How many viewers do you guys see? Because I only see 5. So I don't want to start rambling if not many people have joined yet. You can't hear me? Can you hear me now? Let me unplug my mic. Okay, well, it is kind of a slow morning, so maybe some people are not around either. I guess I can post to Twitter. Just give me a second. Okay, so yesterday was pretty straightforward into the close. We looked at that 70.03. We knew that there was a lot of overhead around 70.07, 70.08, and we weren't able to quite clear before the end of session and into overnight. So lots of stalls in the neutral zone, and right off that bear neutral area, that kind of orange range, which we like to refer to as like playing with fire there. So this right here definitely implied some volatility, okay, like on these stalls right here. And at the very least, and I do have it in the report too, if we were to come back and fail core areas, so fail 6.9, 6.6, 7.1, we'd be at risk of heading back to the channel and then maybe back to core areas, right? 69.20s. And yesterday I figured we didn't really have high odds of doing that. Today a little bit higher odds in terms of back testing downside range. And off the report, so we are still required to try sustaining above the channel this week with higher sustainment near 69, 66, or 58 being a little bit better in case 7.1 or 7.8 is broken. In the event that downside is triggered beneath 5.2 and channel areas fail to sustain above 69.33, 69.38, this is what can put our 69.20s in place. So these were my max downside ranges for the week. I really don't want us going too much lower than this. Yesterday they held off 7.6, 7.8. We already knew that we had range down to 6.6, 6.7 yesterday that we had avoided, but after stalling the neutral range coming back down here, this is also a 34-point stall on this reversal, by the way. I'll just show you guys. Okay, so they never had like a full retractment of range back here. What was the highest range here? Is 7. Let me just delete this. We can just go with like 27 to 28 points. I think it's like close to there. So there is a little bit of a differential, not by much, but because we wanted to get back ideally above 70, 12, 70, 10. And we already knew that from, and remember how I said yesterday we're working with like 6.75 quite a bit. Also from highs yesterday, And from the week, we already know that there was still room for them to break down 66 points to 68 points. So there was already odds for them to take this back down to this 6-7, 6-6, 6-8 area, especially off that 3-2, so 70-32. Okay, you can see there's a lot of confluence around here off that 70-28. Okay, so, and that's mainly why sustaining 6-9, 5-8, 6-9, 6-6 was more ideal, and why triggering beneath 5-4 is what can trigger some volatility to the downside back to 69.20. So this is just in terms of downside range, and we already know that like upside downside limitation has been quite similar. So even like the net differential between, you know, 2-8 and 3-8 stalls, right, like off 3-5, or the difference between where they stalled up here. Oh, I still have it on the chart from yesterday. Okay, so that's good. So 6.75, 6.75, 6.75. Do you guys see the common trend? So same sort of idea is we stalled 34 points yesterday by 6.75 off the lows. So that's not really surprising to me, okay, because it's been the common theme. So obviously the more ideal range for them to have held would have been closer to here. Okay. Do you see what I'm saying, you guys? Like closer to 7-1, 6-6, 6-8. If we look at this in terms of like max range, like this is how we could have had 4-4, but we didn't. Hence there's a lot of overhead near 3-8. So I still think that 3-8 and 4-1 weekly overheads are pretty valid off 33, 34, 66, 68 point ratios. Okay, this should be 68 right here. Do you see that? Whereas off of where they actually stalled highs, this is probably close to like 66 to 68 points. And I just want to show you the price action here off these ranges. Okay, so once they came back, stalled these neutral areas, took it back down. Notice this morning too, overnight session, they tried their best to sustain 8-1, 8-3, but I noticed that they kept stalling our 9-4 and our 7,000 range. These are really calculated spots near 6,999 and that 7,000 mark. These are also off the report. Okay, along with this area here. So I noticed when they brought this back down, and notice like the zone hold here, they had like a slight hold of the zone around 8-8 and then slowly started to come back and cross over between core areas. So there's a bit of a crossover between the zone, core areas, and the means once they kind of brought this back down here. So I noticed when they tried initially holding back in here, you can kind of see like there is some slight, because these are the major spots that we want to hold off the report, right? Like close to 6-6, 6-8. You can kind of see they tried their best to hold right here, especially around like 6 a.m., so before market open. But I noticed that they stalled 7-8. Okay, so 7-8 stalls right before open implied that there could definitely be some range in volatility here. You can also say that they stalled like previous day's lows, but 7-8 is a really calculated level. And so then this is kind of where the volatility was implied. As soon as they took out 6-6, this is how I knew that they could easily backtest 5-8, 5-4, and that's where we'd be at some bigger risk of retesting 69.33 or the 69.20s. They then brought it back this morning, and I think today's open was still above 7-1, so this was good. So 69.72 open, I would say is still not a bad open. They did take out 7-8 in the first few minutes, but if you're paying attention here, they did breach beneath 6-4 and then failed to kind of retrace back over these ranges here within the first 5, 10, 15 minutes. I don't know if you guys saw that. Let me just mark the 5-4, 5-8 areas. Okay. I'm gonna mark the 3-8 and 3-3-3-4. Okay. Then when they brought this back, okay, you notice how they held 3-8. So they kind of held that mid channel. This is what kept it within an inside range on, I believe, the 3-day, considering that they didn't take out the prior day's lows until that structure was broken. Okay, so yesterday's or weekly lows are right around, where was it? Not the weekly lows, sorry, the prior lows, 6931 and 35. Okay, so back down in here, this is also a really good area to go long, guys, actually. Let me pause this for a sec. Make sure my order filled. Because these are our core ranges from the week. Okay, yeah, it did. I had set an order before I started the stream, but I didn't check back to see if it filled. I got an alert on my broker that we broke 3-3. Sorry guys, I just want to make sure I had my position in before I continue. Okay, because yesterday I didn't get my fill at 7-8. Okay, so once they came back and brought this down right here, as soon as they started failing this area here, like around 3-8, and then you see how they stalled 7-1, we can just kind of like, they did take it out just slightly, but this, I would say that this was still progressive, okay? Even though they were really required to kind of take out this 7-8, 8-1 area here. When they brought this down, it was pretty obvious that they're likely going to take out 3-3, 3-4 because we have more odds this time, closer to like this 2-2, 2-3. This is the more ideal area that we want to hold. These are the core ranges, okay? One of my conditions this afternoon was if they're going to come back and try breaking, they have to take out 5-8. Okay, so I did my first long this afternoon off of 2-8. Okay. So my first long this afternoon was right here, which I posted in the Discord. Okay, that was, I think I took it like right around here somewhere. It's like within these few minutes. And I put a very tight stop because I knew that there was some room that they could bring this back down to 2-2, 2-3, 2-4, whatever, okay? And then I wanted to see if they would try clearing 3-8, immediately sweeping the channel above 4-8, 4-9, so you can kind of see like the channel sweep. This is a very good example of a channel sweep here. Do you see this? Like if you set this to a 3-minute, you see how quickly they took out between the ranges of 3-3 all the way through to 4-9-50 right here. So really good sweep of the channel back in here, but they stalled 5-8. So that was one of my conditions this afternoon. If they stall 5-8, there's no way that they can bring this back to, because my conditions were if they hold here and they take out 5-8 before mid-session, so before 12, 12:30, we have odds of, let's say, clearing. If we clear 7-8, these were my conditions this afternoon. I'm just going over them. If we had cleared 7-8, you know, by mid-session, 12:30, 12:45, we had odds of not only getting back to the zone. Let me just mark the zone area here. Okay, we had not only odds of getting back to the zone and retesting these ranges, but even some odds of maybe getting back to whether or not they want to pin like weekly open, like 707, 703. It's midweek, right? So getting back to weekly opening range would have made total sense. But we even had some odds of getting back to 70-20s. This would kind of be like a core hold to a core break, okay? I would say that these odds definitely reduced after they stalled 5-8, but since they came back and held 2-2, 2-3, okay, I have some conditions set for this afternoon, especially since it is mid-session right now too. Like I want to make sure I was streaming during mid-session here, like 12:45 breaks. I want to see if they'd get back into the channel above 3-3, 3-4 during this period, which so far they did, even though there's still some implied volatility. Some of the conditions here are going to be for the period between 12:30 to basically 1:30 is that they try their best to sustain this range in here, but they have to come back and clear this 3-8, probably like close to 4-4, 4-8. But we're going to be kind of constrained to like 5-8, 6-6, 7-1. I don't think we have very high odds of getting back to the zone anymore this afternoon after where they stalled, but it seems like they might just make it kind of like a pinnable afternoon. Worst case scenario, if they don't clear the channel here, like if they don't clear back over 3-3, 3-4, 3-8, 4-8, especially before like 1:30, we could just have a really sticky sideways afternoon between the zone and channel. So it kind of like how they've consolidated over the last hour and a half, I would say. We could see very tight range in these spots here. Okay, even this reduction stick right here, this is a good example of how easily they could have just cleared this over 4-4. Do you see what I'm saying? So they're already starting to stall range a little bit here. And this is the kind of price action we really have to watch for, especially during 12:30, 12:45, 1 o'clock. Okay. And I would prefer that they hold 69.20s, because if they don't, then this is kind of where risk really starts to increase, and we can come back and retest 6899, you know, 6888, 6901, 6906. And we're trying to avoid that, especially for mid-week. The way I had initially traded this when I did that first long off 2-8 is I didn't cover right off here because I waited a little bit just to see how they'd react. But as soon as they had this little stall right here, I covered half at 5-1. And then I just cut the rest at break even and put in a second entry. I waited a bit though because I wanted to see how they act or react around that 2-2, 2-3, 2-4 area. And I'm going to copy paste what I had mentioned earlier this morning in case some of you are not in the Discord. So we had said that it's still super early. There were odds that they could get back to the zone if they come and clear 6958. 6958 to 66 is going to be a very heavy overhead. Then they ended up stalling. And I said I would only add back position if they can sustain this area during mid-session. So that being 6922 to 28. Okay. I would set stops very close to break even. And I also mentioned too that they can easily make this a pinnable range into the close, especially after stalling 5-8. And a lot of this is going to be relative to what they do over the next hour, okay? So, and I gave some of you guys some shit because I feel like you guys are, not all of you, but some of you are really bad with setting conditions, okay? So if we hold 69.20s, we need to clear 6958 by a certain period of time, right? If we don't clear 5-8 and backtest 69.20s, we have to clear XXX, right, by a certain point in time to avoid staying pinnable. So this is kind of where we're at right now. I had sent this like an hour ago, but this is where we're at right now, is we didn't clear 5-8 and we are back testing 20s. So what do we have to clear by what point in time? Even though I already gave you guys the answer. What would we have to clear by what point in time to avoid staying pinnable into the close? So pinnable into the close means exactly what they've been doing for the last hour. They could do this for the next 2-3 hours if they don't start moving here. So give me 2 conditions that they have to do in order to avoid that from happening, because this is where we're at. And I can write on the chart too, so we did not clear 69.58, okay? We retested 69.22, 69.28, okay? Here's mid-session right here. We did, okay, break 69.33 during 12:45. That's mid-session. Even though it's not a full break of the channel, they still broke above 3334, okay? What do you think the next condition has to be? This is the period that's going to determine what kind of price action and range we're going to get this afternoon, you guys. So I would be paying really close attention here. What do you think we have to do over this next half hour to 45 minutes? Specifically between like 1 and like 1:15. And the only reason I'm doing this is because I feel like a lot of you are very, very bad at making conditions. And that's the only way you're going to improve your trades, is if you actually preset conditions. So you're more inclined to like cover if you have conditions preset. Don't make me call out names, guys. Come on. Give me 2 conditions. Okay, I like breaking 3.8. By when though? I don't think breaking 3.8, however, though, would make it not pinnable. Like, I feel like to make it not pinnable, you definitely need at least over 4.8, okay? But breaking 3.8 is okay, but that could still make this a pinnable session. Yeah, okay, that could be an additional condition that you could set. Gouge, like, so if you sustain 2.2, 2.3, 2.4, okay, you have to clear, let's say 3.3, 3.4 by 1:15, like at least get into the channel, right? Maybe test these areas here, like by 1:30 to then maybe clear like by 2, like that could be a good condition. Okay, what about a downside condition? So if we don't sustain, we're lucky because we already know our ranges. Like, I already knew that 69.20s would have the most confluence for downside, okay, for the week, especially on Wednesday for mid-session. So we also knew that 5.8 was the area to clear. So we're already like 2 steps ahead because we know which areas have to react, okay? That's very, very important, okay? What would help us in terms of knowing what areas have to react? What would give us a bigger advantage? We already know which areas have to react to, you know, to price action or whatever. What else gives us a bit of an edge, I guess you could say. I don't really know what to call it. Don't forget, 69.2875 was previous highs. This is a very calculated area. Same with 3-2. What would give us a bit of an edge here? Time. Okay, right? So where do you think we'd have to clear by 1? Ideally to get away from the zone. To get away from 69.20s. Which so far this isn't looking very constructive. You want to hit 3-8 by 1 p.m. Strikerman? Think about what you just said. No. What do you think my conditions would have been right here? At a minimum. For 1 o'clock. Yeah, we probably want to get away from like the zone. I would have preferred that they broke 2875 and 32 here. Breaking 2875 is not bad for 1259, but obviously 3233 would have been better. So yes, my first condition is going to be we want to try getting away from the zone. Okay, so we at least can try getting into the channel or have higher odds of being in the channel during this hour, right? Versus having confliction between the zone and channel, because that's what could keep you sideways. Does that make sense? So far this PA to me is implying that they're still stuck. Does that make sense? So this is easily becoming a pinnable type of afternoon because the period between 1 and 2 is super crucial. And if they just waste another hour doing exactly what they did here, then we could be stuck again. And they did the same thing. If you notice at 11:59, look at where they stalled. Okay, you guys have to get way better at paying attention to detail and to time. I feel like you guys are not. Like sometimes you guys are really good at it and sometimes you guys aren't. Okay, look at, do you see the similarities here between 59, 59, 12, 1? Do you see it? And these are very important spots. Like these are past ranges, right, that we had to clear on December 11th. Okay, so these are very, very important areas. These were part of our previous conditions back in here, if you guys remember. Okay, back in here on the 22nd when we finally cleared. So like these are very important spots. And like look at where they're sitting. That's not a coincidence. Do you see this? Yeah, I could see IWM being stronger because pennies were moving a lot today too. Okay, do you see that? This reduction stick really kind of messed things up. Okay, so your first 5 minutes into 1 o'clock are going to be what can give you maybe, even though you didn't get the best open close, your first 5 to 15, especially by 1:15, because that's your mid-session for the full session today. This can help you basically steer away from staying stuck in the zone again for another hour. Does that make sense? So we're going to watch around 104, 108, 112, 115. I think these are really important points in time to at least try testing 3.6, ideally 3.8, especially considering the kind of opening range we got here. And if you need to go back and read the reports from December 11th just to get a better idea or refresh your mind on why these areas are important, then go ahead. And also pay attention to time. So, I mean, there is a bit of a pattern here though. Okay. Do you see the patterns? Kind of like coming back to these ranges every like 11 to 12 days. Do you see it? And we're also stuck in an inside bar too, so this doesn't really, on both the 8-day, 4-day, there's a lot of inside ranges. Well, I guess 4-day now broke out of that inside range. This is kind of what's putting us at bigger risk. Is getting back to these neutral spots, which we're trying to avoid. Okay, because getting back down here doesn't really help us this week. Also, just on a very base approach, we've hit 113 points on the week. So technically, if they do get back to these areas here, those are like the 133, 132, 128 point ratios. Okay, so we obviously want to try avoiding that, but do you see how there's significance around these price points here? Like especially back to like the 5th, the 22nd, the 11th. Okay, the 14th is our flip date for this week off the report. Do you see how they're correlated to these days? And it's actually correlated to like 114 points in range, or 128 points in range. There's about 7 bars. And the 9-day was flagging and this flips over tomorrow. So this is, you know how that 4-day looks super bearish, you guys? This 9-day is what can help negate 4-day bearish structures. And the reason being is this doesn't flip till tomorrow. And if technically, if this still closes above here, you could still have like that continuation pattern, okay? Do you see what I'm saying? This is what could help this from heading lower, basically. And you can kind of see this is usually where like you start hitting like close to like a 25 to 33% ratio. So far right now they're holding 33%. Do you see that? Major risk is going to be around that 25% ratio, which is basically right back to that 69.09, which is 128 points. So this area is also 128 to 132 points off highs, okay? It's not a coincidence. It's also the previous week's open close. And then 25% of that bear structure. So if we avoid heading back here, what could that imply for the week? Maybe. If they're, or even into next week, if they avoid hitting this type of downside range. So we've hit a total of 113 points on the week so far, 113 to 115. What could this imply for the week? They're holding a 33% ratio here. Remember how we said we had a lot of confluence if they clear 3.8, 4.1 around like 5.1, 5.2. In the event that they actually sustain this area here, they could recycle it up. Yeah, yes. And that would be around that exact area that we looked at yesterday, close to like 5.1, 5.2. Does that make sense? And usually when you hold 25% ratios, sometimes you can trigger like 25 up. So that's how you could get those core ranges, but we won't look at that just yet. I don't want to go too far ahead because we're just looking to see if they can clear this zone by then. Okay, so okay. What time is it? And so they had immediate follow through above 3.2, which is good. Is there a lot of pressure between 112 and 115? So we didn't get above 3.2 for 1 o'clock, so there has to be pressure during this period, correct? I don't know if this helps you guys, but this is how you have to trade. I know it sounds kind of crazy, but honestly, this is, people always ask me like, how do you know like when certain, it's like, because like you're setting conditions for everything. Like trading is no different than like, it's very systematic. Does that make sense? Like you have to have conditions. There has to be time. There has to be like, how do you think algorithms trade around things? So we need to clear 6936 by mid-session. Okay, so otherwise we're gonna stay stuck, right? Because 1 p.m. open put us at a disadvantage. Okay, and I don't care if this disadvantage. Okay. I don't care if this looks crazy in the chart. If this is what you have to do to understand conditions, then you're going to start doing that. So what happens if you don't clear 3.6, 3.8 during this period here? Yeah, or at the least, maybe try holding a little bit higher this time, like closer to like 3.1, 3.2 or something. Well, no, not necessarily, Strikerman. Like you're at a disadvantage, but it doesn't mean that if you have higher sustainment and breaks, you could offset the odds, but you'd have to have very strict conditions to do that. Okay, so, and it's just to see what kind of odds you have to not stay stuck for another half an hour. Okay, so my condition would be we want to stay above 3.1, 3.2. Okay. Like if they're not gonna clear 3.6 by this time, at the very least you want to stay above like 3.1, 3.2 this time. And then you could have like your extensions through 130, 136. What do you want to do during this period, even if you stay stuck? Staying stuck doesn't mean that you can't be progressive, right? So how would you be progressive during this period? Yeah, make a higher low, make a slightly higher high. Okay. So far, is this reacting how we would expect it to between 104 and 112? What do you guys think? Yes, I would say this is reacting pretty good. Like it's holding 3.2, 3.1. Hasn't really broke 3.6 yet, but the timing is closer to like 114, 115. Okay, so we need some progressive sticks now, correct? What time is it? 113. So 113 giving a break of 3.5. That's good. I obviously can't do this every single day with you guys and give you guys minute by minute conditions, but can you guys at least try to get better at doing this? And at least pay attention to like where your hourly opens or opening, closing, make notes of them. Try to understand how that could put you at an advantage, disadvantage. If you're already at a disadvantage, write down conditions that you need to make in order for this to understand what kind of odds you have for the afternoon. I know, and I don't either. Like, I'm human too. It's not like I sit here and just like, I'm not a robot, right? But like, this will help you. Trust me. 6936 being broken right at 114. That's perfect timing for this. We want to see if they can take out 693675 and test 6938 by mid-session here to give us a better odd or advantage in terms of not staying stuck this afternoon and not making this into a pinnable session between 6920s and 30s. Can someone document this this period here, please? Because I do think this is very important. And this is really calculated range, okay, especially at these points in time. I would have preferred that they took out 3675 before 115 just to give you a higher odd. Do you see the immediate volatility that followed here at 115? 2.75 points. This would have likely taken out that 3.8. Do you see that? Had they cleared it just a tiny bit higher for 1.4. Notice how it's trying to hold off 3332 though. So what do you think? Is this enough for this to have an extension? Yeah, I would say that I don't like that they stalled the 693675, especially before 115. But I do like that they at least tried testing 3.6, like they at least retested that high range. But this could easily put this back at risk of coming back, retesting 692223. Does that make sense? Because this hourly period put you at a disadvantage anyway, of like not only staying stuck, but you know, retesting both ends of the trade. So you probably need to have really, really tight sustainment within the first 2 to 3 minutes. So we can maybe watch 118, 121. If they can avoid heading back to 2.8 and try sustaining that 3.1, 3.2 area, I'm just going to mark 3.1 on here so it's a bit easier for me to see, then they could easily come back and retest. What condition do we have to meet? I have it written on the chart, but... So we did test it. We didn't quite clear it. So there's still some odds here. What area do we have to at least tag, you think? Yeah, that's no surprise. It's not a surprise at all. These are weekly support ranges off the report. Breaking 6920s could put us at huge risk, so they're not going to just give it up right away if they wanted to. But does this help you guys understand why and how this? And I said that this could stay stuck in this area an hour and a half ago, like before we even hit 6922, because it's an area that like can cause a lot of volatility, right? So if they're undecided on what they want to do and they already tried everything today, they tried breaking the zone, they tried breaking 7.8, they tried breaking 5.8. Does that make sense? Sometimes they can just stay stuck. especially if there's too much pressure in a single day. So what do you guys think? You think that this looks extremely pinnable this afternoon? You think that we still have an odd of getting a 5-8 retest? What do you think? After they did test 3-6. Okay. I would say that they definitely have to clear 3-6 and 3-8 by like 130, 136 for this to even have a slight probability of getting a retest here. So far still pinnable, but based on where they open this hour, I wouldn't be surprised if they kind of kept it in this range, okay? That doesn't mean that they've completely removed odds of getting back here, because it just means that they could be a little bit more stuck during this hour and then maybe extend odds for the last 2 hours of the day. We also opened at core today too, right? So we did open at 69.72. Do we have odds of getting back to today's open? These would be the earliest points for a retest, I figured. Around 118, 121. So far 118 reduced range. We'll see if 121 can give a structure break. What do you guys think? Do we have odds of getting back to 69.71? I don't think it's entirely unprobable. I just feel like they'd have to get out of the channel probably by like 2:30 for that to be the case. Especially if they want to make it pinnable into the close and use that range for the last hour, half hour of the session or something. Does that make sense? And mainly because they did break the channel here, so it's not like they kept it stuck in this zone. And channel's usually just the nesting area. And it would be a core-to-core break. No, it's not about how fast they can sweep the channel this time, Vincey. That was more so back here based on getting this sweep was required because the idea was that they could get to here, right? Like that, not just above 7.178. This sweep was required because they'd have to get to here. Okay, that required a sweep. This doesn't really require a sweep to get back, you know, to here, I don't think. But I do think it requires them maybe steering away from here after like 2:30, if that makes sense. Like, so if they want to digest there, use like the next hour to do so versus the last hour, hour and a half before the close. Okay, so like if they, even if they stay stuck right here, let's say they bring it like here, whatever here, okay, even if they utilize like the entire period of 2 o'clock in the channel, okay, like it's not the end of the world. Remember, these are also 173 point ranges here off 69.44. Don't forget that. Okay, I don't think that they necessarily have to sweep the channel, but you don't want to digest during the last hour. So after 3 o'clock, though, you definitely would want to be above like 4.4, 4.8. Does that make sense? Because then your last hour, if you're in the means or like between 5.1, 5.2, retest 5.8, it could easily be like a push into the close. Does that make sense? Where like they could give you like one of these kinds of moves into the close. So it doesn't need to be swept, but just needs to avoid digesting too late, if that makes sense. Because if you don't, let's say you don't get like a 3.8 test during this period, right? And then you get that between 2 and 3, but like not really above 4.4, that's how you could stay stuck. Okay, and that's what would make it more of like a pinnable at core close. Like lower cores, like in the 20s or something. Or just like right off 69, 33 to 44. Because 4-4 is also a calculated area here, so we have to remember that. And sometimes too, if market makers are unsure of what to do, it would make sense that they could pin a channel if they're undecided. So yeah, I don't think sweeping it is the, where's 130? I don't think sweeping it is really the concern. I think it's more of like how late they do it, like in terms of like getting it there and like digesting or whatever. And had they already done this like for the 59, like had they already broke, let's say 3-2, 3-3 before here, okay, like we would have already probably tested 4-1, 4-2. So we're already at this disadvantage so far anyway, between 1 and 2 o'clock. I never looked at range yet today, so I do want to check to see. So these are 13-point intervals here, because usually I measure off 12, 13, then 17, so 17 would be closer to like 40. 22 should be closer to like this 4-5, 4-6. I wonder if these are 33-point ratios. Yeah, they are. So 33, 34 points off lows is close to this 5-6, 5-7 area, which is exactly where they stalled. That's interesting. So can someone note that in the Discord? A break above 34 points off lows is 34 points. So like 69.57 break is 34 points off lows. And core areas are always around 51, 52, 53, 54 points, 58 points. So this would make sense. Like these 50 ranges. 44 points would be close to like 6-6, 6-7. Okay, our next conditions are coming up. So since they did test 3-6, but then stalled, what's your next condition here for 130, 136? And this is not a point where you can stall 3-6. Hint, hint. Like, you definitely would have to break 3-6. And the earliest you could tag there is probably by like 129, 130. What's the condition you think? No, you don't need 4-4. I would say 69.38 by 130. So if they can do that ahead of 130, that's even better. I think the actual level is 38.25, so I'm just going to move that up a bit. Okay. Yeah, this would be a very important period to try at least testing these ranges. I don't think we have to clear these ranges at this time, but at least test them. Especially around like 130, 132, 136. 130 would be best because technically we want to get back over 4-4, but it's not necessarily required at this point in time, but it would help us obviously in terms of our odds becoming more favorable. Okay. Can someone document this this next candle here? What time is it? Look at how they're doing it. Final seconds. 69.35.25 being tested here. Final 15 seconds here before this candle closes. This is perfect timing. This is exactly where you'd want to see this close or open off 130. Can someone document that, please? That's perfect time and price. And this is where we could get that push. So where's Vinci? Vinci, this is how you could sweep a channel. Okay, you don't have to sweep the channel, but these would be like conditions that you'd have to have in order for that to even be a probability. Does that make sense? So like you'd have to trigger 3825, let's say, as early as this point in time, and look at that flag, and then try testing that 4-1, because 4-1 is that 17-point interval. Let me just mark 4-1 on here. Okay, and then from there, you could have a break to 4-4 as early as, like, let's say 136. Does that make sense? But it's not required to sweep the channel. I don't think you have to sweep the channel to get back to OR, but this would obviously help you in the sense if they did, okay? 69.38.25 broken off that 129 stick. 69.38 open at 130 with a 69.40.50 stall. 4-1, I believe, is 17 points off lows. Oh, actually, it's 40, so they already hit that. So they already hit half the range of the 34-point ratios right here. There's no closing points, though, above 3825, so I did note that. So even though they took it out, they haven't closed above yet. Okay, you do have to close above to have continuation. And you can see like that immediate rejection stick or reduction stick. This is also why I figure they probably won't sweep, because it's not really a requirement. It's more so just that they have to test these areas in order to avoid staying stuck. So it's kind of just like conditions for this hourly period. Okay. Would you say that our condition during this period was met? And this is price action. A lot of people hate to trade because you'll have these immediate rejections, reductions, right back down. People will miss like exits, stops, whatever. It's like very, very sideways action, and it makes sense too based on where they opened. But we can already expect that based on the minimal conditions that we have to meet. So what do you think? Were conditions met for 130? Yeah, I would say it was, because we did clear 3.6 and we tested 3.825 and 48.25. We didn't close above though, which is what would put us at that risk of back testing, which we could easily still back test 2-2 during this period. And we drew that earlier too. Like you could still test 3.8 during this period and still back test 2-2 because of where they opened, unfortunately. Ideally, you'd probably want to hold closer to like 2.8, but I think they've got odds of back testing these ranges. So far, this is looking, I would say, really pinnable in terms of the kind of PA. And mostly because they're clearing above, but they're not closing above. But the fact that they bet 17 points in range in the first half of the hour can help us a little bit. So far, there's a 2-8 hold here. I actually didn't think that they would hold 2-8, but we'll see. Maybe if they can retract by 136, they can avoid retesting 2-5. Okay, I should put... Do we still have room for downside during this period? I would easily say yes, because they could still take down 6922 21. Ideally, you want to try seeing if they can hold off this 2-8 area. Because failing these ranges is what would put us at that risk of getting back to like 6910, 06, 01. And I think for midweek, it's best that they try to avoid that. And even if it just means staying stuck here or going back to the channel, that would still be better than taking it back to the neutral zone. What's the disadvantage we have though for the week, and why, even though we had a core open today, why could we have odds of getting back to a neutral range here for mid-week? Why do you guys think that is? And this is why I would maybe keep like an open mind. Why could we have a bit of a disadvantage here, even though we still had a core open today? Okay, I'm just going to do like a zone to zone kind of. Why could they still take this here? Because time matters too, so it is Wednesday, it is midweek. They started the week off 704, 707. Okay. Why could they bring it back here? I would prefer that they don't, but why could they? These are the same conditions too, by the way, as the previous week. Why do we have odds, guys, of maybe getting back to the 6901, 10? These are previous week's conditions. Like, so if you could inverse that, so if they basically stalled 692232 or failed to hold that area, they could easily take this back to those ranges. So let's take a look. Today they opened at 6972, which is a core area. Okay, make that green since that's core. Okay, so today's real-time open puts us at an advantage of holding here. Okay, today's real-time open puts us at an advantage of holding the green area. Okay, what about the weekly open? And this is just a visual representation, okay? What was the weekly open? Don't give me a number, just give me an area. What kind of open did we have on the week? Okay, if you guys aren't going to participate, then I'm just going to probably end the stream. Yes, okay, so a neutral open. It is midweek. Midweek is where you could reset, right? So why could they take this back to 6907, 6912? Because of the weekly open, right? So weekly opening area has confluence to take it back to a neutral zone, right? It'd be like a neutral to neutral back test. Do you guys agree? It wasn't core, it was a core ratio. Those are two different things. But yeah. Okay. Can today's real-time open, however, and this week's real-time highs, okay, weekly real-time or weekly highs, and then today's real-time open, could this put us at an advantage? So let's see. Let's take a look at it from that stance. Could this put us at an advantage, the weekly highs and today's real-time open, in terms of holding 6920s and avoiding heading back here? Okay, yes, it can, right? But does a neutral open always mean that you head back to a neutral range? Like if you open neutral, does it always mean that you head back neutral? Kind of like if you have a core open, do you always get a core break? I've assigned like behavioral action to certain price points or zones, right? So the way I think of like core areas, I feel like core areas, they extend range, they provide range, they could give continuation for structure, okay? That's how you can get like core to core. I don't think neutral areas usually imply that you head back to it. They don't always imply that you head back to a neutral range. What do they normally imply? Okay. It's more of like, it gives you odds for both sides. Does that make sense? Okay, it's undecided. It gives both ends of the trade an equal odd. Okay? So does that always mean that you head back to a neutral zone if you open neutral? No. Okay? So do bulls still have a chance to have defeat this week? Yes. Something that they could also do too over the next 2 days if they really want to keep this range stuck is just make it so that they hit like a 70 or 50% range back to like prior week's close or something, prior week's open, or like back to those core ratios like close to 69, 66, 71, 79. Okay, like if they wanted it to be like a core to core break like this, but like very condensed, because technically speaking, did we hit enough range this week to be considered a max range for the week? Even though we would have preferred breaks to 3-8 and 4-1, hitting 2-8, 3-2 is definitely enough to be considered a max range. I also noticed too that they're basically saving an equal amount of range on both sides. So technically we still have room down to like 69.18. Okay, 69.20, which is kind of the same thing as like the upside to like 70, 38, 39. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, so there's a tiny bit of room right now on each side. Just like there is on upside. So you know how we have room to 4-1, 4-4, and then like I think that 5-1, 5-2 is probably max. Okay. And that's that 14 points in range that we discussed earlier, right? As being that something that could be recycled, which is the same thing as like heading back to 69.09. Do you see what I'm saying? Like the confluence has to be here on every single end of things. This is also the same thing as 128 points to the upside. Isn't that crazy how much confluence there is with that? Like, that's insane. So technically, if they hit like halfway back the range here, like it basically take us right back to the zone, I guess. Like that could be where they cap the range for the week. And then we'd have to look to see if they could gap us up or down. So 69.23, let's say. Yeah, plus what's 69.22, 23 plus 66? It should be around 69.88, 69.89, right? And half of 128 is 64 points. So half of 66 points would be 33 points, right? So and half of 132 points would be 66 points. So yeah, that would basically be taking us back to the zone. That's hilarious, isn't it? Half this range, like half of 128 points from these lows. So that could just mean that they can make it so that the week basically just gets pinned back to like these zone ratios here, like where they pinned us on Tuesday and Wednesday. Okay, or even like back in here with a slight probability of maybe getting back to here. And the only reason, okay, so snack, listen. The only reason this could be a probability would be if you hold this core area here The reason why you could get back to a neutral close, which is basically back to your weekly OR, so like 6999, 7001, 7004. No. Where are you getting 44 points? 76, 77, 72 points. What kind of ratios are those? So even though it'd be back to a neutral zone, it's a core ratio off a core area, right? So core ratios of core areas would net back to a neutral zone, okay? So, and that would kind of flatten you for the week, technically. And that's why these areas they weren't core areas, but they were core ratios, which is why these areas had a lot of confluence back here too, and why they could net you like core breaks, if that makes sense. So those are the two scenarios that they could do based on where they take this today. But I would say that they'd have to close at least at 5.8 today, and clear. Tomorrow's Thursday, right? So you'd probably have to get at least a close of like 5.8. You'd have to have really good overnight sustainment of the channel. You cannot come back to 69.20s if that's going to be the case. And you'd have to clear core areas as early as, I guess, tomorrow. And then the Friday could be like a pinned day, like between 8.8 or like back at weekly. Or that's the only way that they could do that. Otherwise, they would keep this very constrained at core ranges, or keep that risk on of heading back to 69.01.03. So the way that this would look like on a candle would be like this. Okay. And then like this. At a minimum, probably. Does that make sense for Thursday? And then maybe Friday could just be a very tight day. That's how that would look like if they want to negate that. And it would just flat. It would just end the week flat. You'd basically have a weekly doji. That's one scenario. If they wanted to give this core to core, you'd probably have to break core ratios and then enter the zone, and that's what would give you like a break like this. I don't know if they have the momentum to do that. I feel like to do this, they'd probably have to break 6.6 today, I think, for that to be the case. And then the bear scenario would be that they don't break 5.8. They maybe get like a tiny green bar like this tomorrow, stall core areas or something, stall 6.4, 6.6, and then you could see like a bearish reversal like this. Does that make sense? And because we still have downside to 69.01, 69.07, 69.09. Does this help you guys understand like the kind of odds that you would have over the next 2 days? I would prefer that they hold the 69.20s, to be honest, and bring this back to these core ratios, just because we did test 70, 32, and 28 this week. But I don't think the market really owes us much more above there. My max ratios for the week anyway was 70, 38, 70, 41, with some odds of getting 70, 52. But I feel like those odds are probably reduced now. So let's see. Vinci, there's your higher low. Do you see your conditions coming into play? So they don't necessarily have to sweep the channel, but they do have to test 3.8. They did that. They do have to make a higher low. They did that. What would be your final condition for the hour? Yeah, because they're... I know. This is better price action, Vinci, to like understand the logic behind the trade. More it is in terms of capturing range, if that makes sense. Thanks, Mose. So what's our final condition, guys, for the hour? We had 4 conditions. This would be the last condition that we had. Oh, why did that get deleted? What was the final condition that we had? So this is good that they didn't take down 2-2. What was the final condition that we had for the final hour here? No, we don't have to fully clear the channel. But I did prefer that they tried testing 4-4. Remember what I was saying, Vincy? I don't think we have to clear the channel during this hourly period, but it would be good if we can at least get 3-8-4-4 test. And even if we stall 4-4, 4-6, okay, and even if there's like some sideways action, even if they take the entire hour at 2 to 2:30, 2:45 in the channel or upper channel, that's fine. Okay, like remember how we said this? You don't have to clear the channel during this hour, but at least test 4-4 to give you some better odds for the next hour, right? My condition for 2 p.m. was hopefully be at least over 3-8, ideally 4-4, okay? Those are the 173 point ranges. Of course, being over 4-9, 4-8 is going to give us the best odds of getting like a 5-8, 6-6 break within the next half hour, which can give us odds of getting a 7-1 retrace. But in order for us to get a 5-8 retest, all we really need to do is get back over 4-4. So let's see where they close this. I just figured 4-4 seemed more logical than 4-8 this period, but we'll see. I would obviously prefer that they get over 4-8. Like, that's going to help us immensely for the last hour, but... So, Strikerman, do you see how... Doesn't necessarily mean you'll stay stuck. You can still be stuck, but progressive. Okay, and that would entail where you test, the time that you do so, where you sustain, making higher lows, making higher highs. So, was every condition I talked about before this hour began met? In order for us to maybe have a progressive afternoon and not stay stuck. At least have some odds of getting 5-8 or 6-6. Yes. Okay. The last condition I would say is getting back over that 173 point interval, which is 69.44. I think this is also aligned with 22 point ratios here, we said. Okay, so we'll have to see. Because we said if we had 17 point ratios, which they did back here, we could see 34 points, which is 5-8. If they give us 22 point ratios this hour, we could see 44 points, which is 6-7, 6-8. That's the most dumbed down way that I could explain this, okay? So getting 22 point ratios this hour could really help us get not only 5-8, but maybe 6-6, 6-8, 7-1. Does that make sense? Getting a full core-to-core break is usually 50 plus points. That's how you could get like breaks of like 7-1, 7-2, 7-8, whatever, which would be breaking real-time highs. Real-time high is 6-9, 7-3. Or 7-6-9, 7-9.75. Okay. What time is it? There it is, final minute. 69.44 being tested here just ahead of 2 o'clock. This is perfect PA for us to have better odds into the next 2 hours. 69.44 taken out in the first 5 seconds here of 159. This is way more progressive than the 1 p.m. stick. Do you guys agree? And these are 173 point intervals, which is half of 346. So in general, these are really big areas for ES. And this is the exact spot I wanted to be in for the last point of this hour. Obviously being over 4-9 or or 50 would be better, but I don't think we need that much. I think we just need at least 4 4, 4 5. These are also 22 points off lows and the 173 point ratios, which is why I think 69, 44, 45 is technically enough, okay? Thanks, Vinci. And the common pattern that I found this whole hour is they've been testing above but never closing above. That's been one of the issues. So like even this right here, they tested above 4-4, they couldn't quite close above 4-4. Okay, so same sort of idea. This is why you could maybe stay stuck a little bit. Did they hit more than 22 points though? I don't think they did. I think they stalled by like literally 0.5 or 0.25. Okay, so what do you think the conditions would be for this next hour? Two p.m. I still think is a very important hour because really it's what could make or break the differential in range. What do you guys think? And probably the same thing as the first 5-10 that we saw after 1. So probably have to watch like 204, 207, 208. What do you guys think? I drew this earlier, but so far this is playing out. I just reposted it in the Discord in case you guys missed it, but yeah, we don't really have to do anything, really, okay? But just because we don't necessarily have to clear the channel right away, wouldn't it be ideal if they at least test these areas within like the first half hour? Kind of like they did back in here, like how they tested 3-6 in the first 15 and then they tested 40 and 3-8 by 130. I still think it'd be important that they at least try, you know, testing these areas within the first half. And then ideally we want to try sustaining above. I think because they opened at where did they open? 4-3? 4-350 and not 4-4 or 4-4-5. Probably want to sustain over, even though we have room to sustain 3-2, 3-3, I'd probably want to sustain closer to like 3-5, 3-6 this period. Just give me a second, guys. I have to answer this. Hold on. Okay, I'll shut off the stream and I'll maybe restart this because I don't know how long this is going to take. Watch for this potential structure break though.